Hopeless Raider here, and I'm here with a video for Final Fantasy XIV. We're going to be talking about healing. And I'm not talking about just a simple guide of how to heal your rotation or whatever for each of the class. We'll kind of go over that, but it's more of the journey to learn how to heal. Because there's plenty of people out there that just jumps into the role just fine, no issues whatsoever. But there are those who are attracted to the role, but can find it a little daunting because you're supposed to keep the party alive. You don't want to make mistakes. So it's the pressure of it that really does put some people off from really trying it out. But sadly, healing in Final Fantasy XIV isn't really that intensive to begin with, especially once you know what you're doing and the party's doing what they're supposed to be doing. You'll find that you're just DPSing, which leads to one of the other things that will put people off. It's like, I'm supposed to DPS while healing. It seems like you're just adding more layers on top of a cake, and to a lot of people, especially new healers, it will feel overwhelming. But it's really not. It's quite simple. But I myself is also not a healer. I really don't play them despite playing years of MMOs. The healing role has never really appealed to me. It's something I always wanted to try, but never did. So instead of a how-to video, this would be more of a journey together of learning how to heal, getting the confidence to heal. And by the time these series of videos are over with, the goal is to be able to heal a pug savage. And the reason why I selected healing a savage as the end goal, especially a pug one, is because it's a raid that should be doing a lot of damage. And with it being a pug, less coordination, it should be more chaotic. So you really need to be confident in your healing abilities to really successfully heal one of these. Unless everyone's doing the fight perfectly, then you're just barely healing at all. And when it comes to DPS, you really only have 3 buttons to press. You have your single target damage, you have your dot, and you have AoE. That's really it. So as we go on this journey of learning how to heal together, we'll go over the basics with the first healing class that's available, which is the Conjurer. We'll familiarize ourselves with the spells they have for healing. We'll try it out in a duty support dungeon, so you don't have to worry about players. And then we'll do it again with players to build the confidence, because it's really playing with other players is where people are lacking confidence in. So once you get that confidence built up where you can click that duty roulette as a healer or queue for that dungeon that you need to do in the MSQ, you'll be taking your first steps of becoming a good healer. So let's go over the abilities real quick that you'll have as a conjurer, so you know what your toolkit will somewhat look like. First, you got Stone, which is your single target DPS. You got Cure, which is your single target healing ability. After that, you got Arrow, which is your dot, which you can play on a single target and something you want to keep on a target at all times. Medica is a healing AoE, area of effect, in case you didn't know. And it's something you want to use in the center of the group, so it hits everyone. Resurrection is for when someone's HP goes to 0, they're dead. You can bring them back up. They'll have a little bit of a debuff for going down, but it'll be okay. Now these other spells you don't really have to worry about because we're not quite there yet. Now these are the healing roles, which is shared between all the healers. You got repos, just take that off. Don't use that. As soon as for removing debuffs like poison and such, and you can tell which ones you can remove because on top of the icon, the debuff, it'll have a solid white line. You probably won't use this ability that much, but keep on your hotbar anyways for when you do need it. Next is Lucid Dreaming, which is a good way to regenerate mana in combat. It's on a minute cooldown, but gets 21 seconds of it, so it's worth hitting when you need it. Next is Swift Cast, which allows you to instantly cast a spell. I would pair that with Resurrection so you can quickly get people up. And these other spells I really wouldn't worry about because we won't really use it until later. Like Surecast allows you to not be knocked back, and Rescue is a utility that you can pull people out AoEs if you need to. But for this video, don't worry about these abilities at the moment. Now that we know what spells we got to work with, we'll go into the first dungeon using the duty support. I'll go over some things real quick about it. Duty support will give you a party of NPC players, so you don't have to feel rush along like you would in a normal group, or feel like a mistake will be the end of the world. You can play around in there, get used to your spells, used to the dungeon layout, how many groups of enemies, the bosses, mechanics, stuff like that. It's also meant to be a tool for you to use to kind of like learn your job, but honestly, it kind of fails at that because the AI doesn't quite interact like how players would. Because in a normal dungeon, players pull wall to wall, and DPS will AoE to trash down. Now, you really can't do that in duty support since the DPS won't AoE like that, and the tanks won't really use the tanking mitigation like a player would. So you won't really get the full effect of what it's like to actually heal a dungeon by players. But it's a good place to learn the layout of the dungeon, the groups you got to deal with, what they may or may not do, and boss fights, which most are really easy in this game. It's not like the days of Realm Reborn when you would mark targets, a kill order and everything. Yeah, those days are long and gone. It's super simple. So, as a healer, you'll just have your 2 spells that you'll do. At this moment, you won't have access to your AoE damaging ability, but you got your dot and your single target attack, which the goal is to dot up as many enemies in the group, depending on size of the pool. Because if it's a large pool, you won't have time to dot up all the enemies before trying to healing the tank from the massive damage that they're going to be taking. But small groups, like in the duty support, you should be able to dot them all up before you go into your single target. And you really don't have to heal the tank in between pulls because he'll probably naturally regenerate that health back. So there is very, very little healing whatsoever. I'm showing some examples on screen at the moment. We're going to show a boss fight. First boss fight in this dungeon isn't very hard at all. They'll have a AoE that goes out around it, but it's easy to move out of. The tank will take a little bit more damage, but it's probably only have to heal him maybe twice. So you just keep up your dots and keep casting stone and just don't stop. You always be casting. And this dungeon that's pretty much it. Second boss, they introduce some adds to it. Now you can add a little bit more tension to the trash pulling by pulling more than you should, and see if you can't keep the tank alive. I mean, that's an interesting way to do it, and gives you a little bit more of a stress test kind of deal. See how well you can handle the damage going out on one target and survive if you can. So pull as much as you can, test it out, because a duty support is a good way to do this stuff in a dungeon without worrying about teammates. Now, there's nothing really interesting in this dungeon to go over, so I'm going to leave it with that for the duty support. Now, a good place for information on leveling a healer is the balance, which you can see a lot on the white mage leveling guide. It'll give you some tips, some terminology for you to learn. I'll just show you what level you learn skills at and what they are, and a little bit of how to use them at those levels. It's a very good place to go to, so you can have eyes on some text to know, like, okay, what should I be doing here at this level, and how to properly use some of these spells. It's a really good place for that. Now I'm going to show a little bit of that same dungeon with a group. And another thing you can do is just change your UI around to fit better, so that way you can heal a little bit easier. Find what keybinds you like to use. And when you see your tank sprinting ahead, use your sprint as well to keep up with them. And one good dungeon etiquette is to let the tank lead. For that is their job is to kind of set the pace, and this way they can gather everything up, and it will be on them without it going crazy to yourself or DPS. Now currently they got rid of really the only DPS job that had dots other than healers. Well, they didn't take away the job, they just took off the job's ability to do dots. They reworked the summoner. But it would be nice if they do introduce another job that does so, is that on the target list, if they would also put debuffs that the player has applied, such as the dots, next to those names, so you can see which one still has them for when you have a group. So that way, or maybe a timer as well, so if it falls off, you can reapply it. Be a nice way to manage that without having to rely on some third-party illegal mod. Because I know in World of Warcraft, we use add-ons on the Warlock to keep track of all of our dots. So when it falls off of something or cycling through the enemies, we can easily put it back up there before it falls off. That would be some nice quality of life updates to the game. Now we're at the first boss again, and with the players here, shouldn't be too much different, as long as no one gets hit. And look at that, we get to use Asuna. Now when you do a random group, you're not sure who you get or anything like that. Some players may or may not be doing to their full extent or playing as a tryhard. So they may be, a little absent-minded, or they're dealing with something in real life. So they might just stand around or just do auto attacks. Don't worry about it. Don't make it much of an issue unless it really becomes an issue. But for dungeon runs, people tune out on these things. Now, I've reposed on this character's hotbar, but you can probably just take that off because really it's a spell no one needs. Also, as a new healer, in case the tank is pulling too much and it's beyond your ability to keep them healed up and everything, do let them know that you're a new healer and ask them to pull smaller groups if you can't keep up. Most of the time, they should react pretty well to that. Don't really get many uh, jerks in this game that'll just keep doing it anyways and ignore your input. Not saying that you won't get someone who'll be combative and insulting, but that's the duty finder, and just try your best to ignore that person. But in all my years playing this game, I generally rarely run into people like that when I'm just going with randoms. Oh, and also, in case you do pull threat, don't run away from the tank, run to the tank, so that way they can get back that threat off the target that's after you. Because generally the tank's AoE abilities will be able to pick it right off you. So yeah, really it's just the big pulls that you will be mostly healing on. And just DPS when you can. Don't have your AoE ability yet, so don't really worry about that. Because you'll mostly be healing anyways. Now, as for the final boss here, it can do some ripples to add some ads into the fight. So you can stand over the grate that the ads spawn from, and when you get the option to click on them, you can do that if you want to prevent it from coming out. But usually I think the boss will die before that will happen. So that's it for the introduction to healing for the first dungeon, and it's real low level, so there's really not much to it on this video. And as I progress and get better at healing myself, I'll do more videos. I'll probably do one at 30. So keep a lookout for future videos, because this will be a series that I'm going to try to get out pretty regularly if I can. That's all I got for you today. Leave a like or subscribe so that we can see the future videos coming up. Leave a comment if you so wish, asking a question or something. That's all. Later.